In the last portion of the series, I spoke about the basics of IPFS. However, I also spoke about the next portion of the series, this video, which would cover hosting content within IPFS. Simply put, the internet is made of files that are retrieved from a server and displayed in a web browser, so it shouldn't be too surprising to hear that a decentralized network meant to deliver files can be used to host content. One of the biggest drawbacks, however, is that the IPFS network, there can be no interaction with a server like on the normal web, so preventing things from contact forms, discussion boards, comments, and even the ability to easily edit a web page. Now, there are some minor benefits to this, no web analytics, pop-ups, or dynamic advertisements without the web designer being creative, but ultimately hosting on IPFS will limit you to only a static web page. Though people can be pretty creative within these limitations, this tutorial will only cover the bare bones of such a setup, so from here I'll touch on the tutorial in 3 parts: creating content, hosting content, and assuring access to said content. Since you already are aware of how to upload or download content on the IPFS network, if you're going to use IPFS like a file sharing service, you can simply skip this step, as there'll be little to no effort to getting your content ready once you actually have the file. Even videos can be uploaded straight onto the network and then downloaded or streamed by users. That said, if you intend to build a web page hosted on IPFS, then continue on. As I said before, you're going to be limited in what you can actually implement in web pages on IPFS. Therefore, your web creation project will look a lot like it would in the early 2000s. Because Nauvoo was discontinued, I'd recommend installing the HTML editor Composer to create a Word document-like site which contains everything within a single web page. And I told you this was going to be bare bones. Proofread it because it'll be a real pain to try and make changes, and get your HTML file ready. Alternatively, you could export a Word document as HTML using Microsoft Office Word or LibreOffice. The software dedicated to HTML, either Composer or your editor of choice, will probably be better. Finally, it would also be possible just to use a text document instead of HTML, but that would be really limiting your creative expressions option, so again, I would just go with HTML. Hosting. If you go through the trouble of making a website, you'll need to make sure it's online, or you kind of just wasted your time. Your first option when hosting content on IPFS is to host it yourself. This will, of course, require you have a device that is always online, so it's certainly not for everyone, but it's worth considering to just fire up a device and pin it and leave it sit. Secondly, it would be possible to rely on the network itself to host your content. If it's accessed by enough people, then theoretically it would be hosted by all the individual nodes accessing the content, especially if it's the kind of content that you would expect others to pin to assure that the content remains hosted. That said, for a lot of us, that's far from a guarantee that our content will be hosted by others. Third, you could always play a game of whack-a-mole with public gateways and the like. A week or so ago, I used a free version of Global Upload, which temporarily hosts a file, but requires payment to actually pin it, to upload a text file, which I then loaded in several gateways. I let it sit for a week or so, and then checked on it, and it was still there. So if a file is small enough and you go out of your way to request it on a bunch of different gateways regularly, then it could probably just kind of float around the network and remain hosted that way. Furthermore, if at some point all the nodes end up discarding it, you can always re-upload the file and request it again to get things going. You may also want to couple this alongside self-hosting if you're already planning on self-hosting. That way you can assure that the file will be quick to access, since loading a file from a gateway that's catched the file is probably going to be faster than loading the file from your computer. Finally, there are also paid services that will host your content for you. While this may seem like we just went full circle back to regular paid internet hosts, most people who want to host content on IPFS, this is probably best. As I mentioned, Global Upload previously, they currently have paid options that would allow you to permanently pin content. Additionally, services like Pinata both have free and paid pinning services. Pinata's free service actually allows 1 gig of bandwidth per month, and their next plan starts to charge you 15 cents per gigabyte of bandwidth that you use. Not only are these very fair prices, but if you host a single web page, then these are actually really amazing. Say a simple HTML website that's 10 kilobytes, that would allow you to access it 10,000 times per month on Pinata. And furthermore, since if it was accessed 10,000 times a month, it would likely be distributed among the whole network instead of just solely being on Pinata, meaning you would get a whole bunch of additional access as well. For this experiment, I'm just going with Pinata to host my IPFS website, using the free version as I don't really need too much bandwidth. I'll leave the hash in the description as well as probably on screen. With content created and uploaded, the final thing you need to do is make sure your content is easily accessible. You should have your hash that can direct users to the file. However, ideally, you want to have some sort of clickable link that will allow users who may or may not know what IPFS is to access the website. Also, some of these options may allow you to change the hash that it directs the users to, and thus modify the content on your website without actually modifying the link that you've already shared. It is worth noting that IPFS has a serving called IPNS, which, aside from sounding funny when you say it out loud, is essentially a hash that you can point to any other hash of your choosing. This would be perfect for easily updating web content. However, since it's a step or two outside the scope of this basic tutorial, and because IPFS's speed make IPNS practically unusable, I'll be leaving it out of this guide. Anyway, I'll cover 3 different methods of doing this below. First, aside from sharing the hash on its own, the easiest way to have a clickable link that requires no extra understanding of IPFS is simply to share a link to a gateway that has your file open. The only drawback is that the link is a bit too long, and you also can't change the hash without manually editing the link. Secondly, if you want to share your content in standard web form, you can use shortened URL or redirect pages to get the user from a link to a gateway with your file's hash on it. Services like bit.ly allow you to shorten a link to a gateway and share the link with others. Similarly, if you have a normal website, you can create a redirect page, and when users load that redirect page, it'll immediately redirect the user to the gateway page that has your file loaded on IPFS. In either of these cases, you can also generally alter the link so that the same link sends people to a new IPFS hash if you need to change your page or content. Finally, you can always use a domain, a subdomain service, or a subdomain of an existing domain that you already own to direct the user to your IPFS website or content. In any of those cases, you can set the domain to either to redirect the user to an IPFS gateway link, or use something like Cloudflare's IPS services to configure your domain to connect to IPFS content like they would on a normal website. Well, I hope you found this useful, interesting, or both. Those links I provided are examples of real links that link to my new experimental IPFS website. Links in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching.